life. 3 simple questions that you can use to figure out where you are, what you want to do next, and what you want to stop doing because it's not helping you out very much. Today, we have the great pleasure of talking to one of the men who made it to the NFL. And I pulled this up before we started talking. Between 1.6 and 2% of all college athletes will ever make it into the NFL. That number gets even smaller when you zoom out and you think about all the high school football players that are out there. It's something like 0.02%. So to make it to the dance is remarkable. To make it to the dance and spend 9 seasons in the NFL is even more incredible. To be 5'10", 157 pounds and make it to the NFL is even more extraordinary. JJ Birden joins us today. He's got a brand new book. There he is on the screen. It is called Beat the Coverage. It is out officially right now at the time of the release of this podcast. And I have to welcome you to the show and say thanks for agreeing to do this first and foremost. And you know me, man, I like to get right to it. So forgive me if we don't ask all the questions about how are you and what's the weather like. I want you to take me inside a moment right away. And the moment is you're standing next to a goalpost, getting ready to be told to leave the practice field. This is something that's in the book, but would you go ahead and share that story as we start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Oregon on a track scholarship. I was a #1 wide receiver in high school, but no Division I school recruited me because I was 133 pounds. So I had this game plan that I was going to get a scholarship in track and see if a school would let me walk on. And none of the Division I schools said okay, except for Oregon. Oregon said, you come run for us. Second year, if you can convince the coach, you got our blessing. So that's all I wanted was an opportunity. So ran the first year, and then the second year during spring practice, I started sneaking out of the weight room with the track team and going to watch the football practice because I wanted to evaluate them, Matthew, to see if these guys were that much bigger. And so 2 days of that, I made up my mind I can do this. I just got to create the opportunity. So the very next day, I go stand on the field near the goalpost because you're not supposed to be on the practice field, but I figured someone's going to tell me to leave and I get to at least tell them why I'm here. And that's what I did. I stood there for like an hour and 15 minutes. And then finally, head coach Rich Brooks, he saw me from down the way and he takes a beeline to me and he's getting closer and closer. And I'm just getting nervous. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. Here we go. And he goes, Birden, you're the track kid. What are you doing out here? And I said, Coach, I want to play. And he's like, well, we evaluated you. We just thought you were too small for college football. I said, no, Coach, I can do it. And we just went back and forth. But the next day he said, come to my office. I convinced him to let me walk on. And I guess you could say the rest is history, and I love sharing that because as you mentioned, the NFL career, I wasn't trying to play in the NFL, but I created that opportunity. I got my foot in the door. I made it happen. Had no idea it would lead to 9 years in the NFL, but that's eventually what happened.
An incredible career, man. 9 seasons. Is this statistic correct? Nobody under 160 pounds has played longer than you?
As of right now, yeah. I mean, I've gone back 35 years. I'm as far as I can go just to confirm that. And yeah, as of right now, that's still true.
So JJ's a speaker now, and as I mentioned, he's got a brand new book. It's out right now. It's called Beat the Coverage. And, I've seen plenty of NFL speakers on a stage trying to convince me that what they know is something that I can use. I've known you long enough to know that you've found a really distinct way to make your time in the NFL and the lessons that you've learned along the way, something that we can use. Now, in the book, Beat the Coverage, there are 6 steps. I'm not going to ask you to sit and rifle all of them off, but one of them is play to your strengths, which certainly seems like something you did. You weren't the biggest. You weren't the strongest. You weren't the tallest. But what did you consider to be your strength other than like, I belong here, that mindset?
Yeah, I think, like you said, mindset. But after that, you start realizing that the intangibles, the talents, the abilities you have, speed, quickness, jumping ability. I was a long jumper in college. Intelligence. I was smart. I could process information fast and make decisions on a fly. And those qualities combined really helped me take advantage of the talents I did have, the strengths. Because like you mentioned, play to your strengths, but cover your weak spots. And sometimes you can't do anything about your weak spots. I weighed 157 pounds. I was going against guys that were 40 to 100 pounds bigger than me. I couldn't do anything about that, but I could protect my weak spot by being quicker, by being faster, by being smarter on the line of scrimmage.
I love this because, my philosophy in Air Check Your Life is it's all about those three questions. And here they are. What are you getting right? What is going okay that you could tweak and make a little bit better? And what are you doing that's making it harder for you to do the thing that you ultimately want to be doing? And, one of my brilliant consultants along the way, a guy named Steve Reynolds, said, let's just do more of the stuff you're getting right. And that's what I'm hearing as you're answering this question. And so I'm wondering if you can recall a moment in your NFL career where being the small guy was the advantage.
Oh, yeah. For me, anytime I went against a taller DB, these guys are 6 foot to 6'4" and long and lanky, but they didn't have the body control, the quickness, the ability to change the direction the way I could. And what was interesting about it is a lot of these DBs, when they went against me, I could see it in their eyes. They were a little worried because they knew, because I tell you this quickly, when we played the Saints one time, and the Saints defensive players, every player gets a scouting report on the opponents you're going to play. Well, one of the defensive players was one of my buddies. And I was like, hey, so what's in the scouting report for me? He said, in the scouting report for you, it said, small, undersized. If you can get your hands on him, you can take him out of the play. If you don't get your hands on him, he's gone. So be smart about your decisions, So, and I realized that, when I stood in front of a defensive back, they were worried about my speed, and I try to use it to my advantage.
How are you helping leaders these days recognize what their advantages are? And how are you helping other people lean into their strengths?
I think just primarily helping people understand first that we all face coverage. Coverage is anything standing between you and the results that you want. But most people don't have a strategy to defeat the coverage. They allow the customer behavior, the economy, fear, negative thinking, self-doubt, or even the unexpected things affect their performance. And so what I've tried to do is to give them a framework, something that has been battle tested, because this framework is what really allowed me to play as long as I did. But to give them a framework that they can implement, they can use in anything that they're pursuing. I mean, yeah, I wrote it for leaders. I wrote it for entrepreneurs. I wrote it for business professionals. But it's really for everybody because we all face coverage. And I think that with my book, I'm empowering them with a strategy that they can implement.
There it is. Beat the coverage. It's out right now. You can pick it up. If size was your disadvantage, preparation had to be your advantage. Why don't you walk us through preparation, both in the NFL and how you would get ready for a game, and how all of us, man, in our regular life might use preparation as a skill we could sharpen?
Yeah, that was a big component because I realized where I lacked. I knew that preparation could really, raise the bar for me. So I spent a lot of time preparing. And that was one of the learning curves when I got to the NFL. I didn't realize that we spent more time in a classroom or watching film and analyzing, the system more than on the field. But every day it's part of your routine. It is time block. When you're studying plays, when you're studying film, when you're practicing on your own, so the daily method of operation, those were always in my schedule every single day. Even when I went home, Matthew, same routine, eat dinner, have one bowl of ice cream because my doctor said I was a little light. I could gain a little weight, but then I would sit there for 2 hours watching film, studying my plays. because one of the things that gave me the confidence was going into game day knowing that I know the system. If Montana or somebody changes the play, I know the audibles, that I am prepared, because you're nervous, but it's more of an excited nervous because you know what you need to do, when to do it, and how you're going to do it. So it's one of the things I always encourage business leaders to do more preparing, because as a business owner, as a former business owner in a medical company, a lot of my employees and managers, they didn't spend time working on the skills. They didn't spend time preparing for meetings the way they should. But it is one of our competitive advantages that if we can go unprepared for anything, we're more than likely to win that moment.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, to keep this in the sports lane for people that love that type of an analogy, I'm a huge hockey fan. And, you take the greatest player in the NHL today, which is probably Connor McDavid. And in a 60-minute game, Connor probably has the puck on his stick for a maximum of 2 minutes. And it is this idea that we always try to impress upon youth hockey players, which is what you do away from the puck is more important than what you do when you've actually got the puck, because you're going to spend more time away from than you won't. And I love what you're saying right now, because I wonder how many people in sales sit in front of the mirror and rehearse what they're getting ready to say to somebody, or go over their speech to make sure that it sounds really polished, or ask their friends for some feedback to see where their blind spots might be in their preparation for that meeting. I want to ask selfishly, and for the folks who are here because, they love football, is there a big difference in the quarterbacks and the way they throw the ball? Or at that level, are they all throwing it 300 miles an hour and with pinpoint accuracy?
I'd say first at that level, all the quarterbacks have the physical skills. I mean, there's a lot of parity. I mean, there's a couple guys like maybe Josh Allen or someone who's got a much stronger arm, but for the most part, all the quarterbacks have the physical tools. The difference maker is the ability to perform under pressure consistently. And that has a lot to do with your preparation, because when a quarterback gives us the play, this long play, he has to walk the line of scrimmage. He has to quickly be able to recognize what defense are they in? Are we in the right play? If we're not, what play do I change to? And out of all the quarterbacks I played with, I saw Joe Montana do that better than anyone. He just was so cool and calm. He walked to the line of scrimmage, and he always had the ability to put us in the right play, which Matthew caused me to step up my preparation even more, because Joe would call audibles we hadn't heard like in weeks. So I had to make sure I knew all 400 of those audibles in case he pulled it out. But no, it was really a joy to watch him, because, someone as successful as he was and joining us at age 36, Montana came in, he studied like a rookie, he prepared like a veteran, and he led like a pro. He was a consummate leader.
That's so cool. The book, as I mentioned, is out right now. It's called Beat the Coverage, written by JJ Birden. I want to ask you a question. So, I talk a lot about communication in my line of work. And one of the lines that I like to deliver, JJ, is so many of us get stuck on making the other person the problem. And I believe that as soon as we make the other person the problem, we actually stop solving the problem. And so what I try to instill upon people is a mindset of, it's not you versus me, it's you and me versus the problem. And I would just like for you to kind of shake that out a little bit, man. As you hear that, how does that apply to, what you used to do in the NFL? How does that apply to what you do in business? How does that apply to what you're teaching leaders? This idea that we have to get on the same page because we're both chasing the same thing.
Yeah, great question. First, I would start with me, the individual. So one of the things you learn playing the NFL is that, you're playing on a team, but you got to do your job. And your job, you're constantly under a microscope. You're constantly being filmed. You're constantly being evaluated. If a mistake is made, you can't blame someone else. You got to look at the man in the mirror. And that mindset I've always taken, like, instead of making up an excuse, how can I get better? Where can I improve? Even when I have a great game or great presentation, it's still, how can I be better than I was the day before? So it's that growth mindset. The second component is you learn as being a part of a team is that, your team is not successful unless everybody does their job. There might be 11 guys on a field for the play, but each person has an assignment. And if that one guy doesn't do his assignment correctly, we could fail on that play. We're not going to win. And the same thing is in business. Everybody has to understand their individual role, but they also have to understand the team role and the impact they make on the team. And so once people understand that, the twofold kind of approach, individual and team aspect, most of the time business leaders get it.
Yeah, you and I are part of a mastermind with Dr. Will Moreland and Frank Kitchen. And Will, I think, said on our last call, maybe he asked you about this. He was like, look, how many times? Oh, no, you know what? It was at the speech that he did, that Will did for the firefighters thing. And he said, how many times did they throw the ball to you during a game? And your answer was something like 5 to 10, right? On average. But there's like 50 plays in a game. So more times than not, the ball was not coming your way. And so I think it's valuable for people to hear that, because in business, we need to orchestrate ourselves the same way. We need to show up every day like we're going to get the ball. And we have to go so hard that we fool the competition, or we draw the competition in so that we can beat them. I can't believe we're about to wind down on this conversation. It's gone by so quickly. Where did the idea for Beat the Coverage come from for you?
Another great question. Well, first, I've reflected back to my NFL wake-up call. Every NFL player has a wake-up call, and mine took place my second year in Cleveland. We were doing a full pad practice, and you're doing one-on-ones. One-on-ones, you get to go against the defensive backs. It's you against him. It's on film. Everybody's watching you, trying to show out. And my first rep was with a veteran defensive back named Hanford Dixon. Hanford was a great player years before, but now he's older. And I'm like, I'm going to run all by him. Anyway, so our rep came up, ball was snapped. I gave him a move like this to run by him. Hanford locks me up, grabs my shoulder pads, and he throws me out of bounds on the ground. So while I'm looking up at him, I go, dang, man, it's just practice. Hanford turns around, he squats down in my face, and he says something I'll never forget. He says, rookie, in the NFL, every day is game day. And if you don't figure out how to beat man-to-man coverage, the NFL for you will stand for not for long. And that was really the story that led to Beat the Coverage. And then I just started thinking about everybody faces coverage. For me as a wide receiver is what stood between me and the end zone. But for everyone else, it could be anything. And so if I could create or share my framework, I can empower so many people to accomplish the goals that are important to them.
Is this Hanford guy somebody that stayed in your life in a meaningful way moving forward? Because I always think, I hear those stories and I go, it'd be easy for you to hate on him, but it'd be real easy for you to love on him too if you actually got your ego out of the way. Oh, yeah, totally. Now, Hanford, I haven't talked to since then. And I've actually reached out to him on social media because I wanted him to know the impact he made. He probably doesn't remember this. I'm sure he doesn't. But that moment impacted my career so much because that's when I started using my strengths. How can I be quicker on the line? How can I use my feet? How can I use my head? But because of that experience with Hanford, I became a master at beating man to man. And it's one of the reasons why I played so long, because it was hard to jam me on the line. But every player has an NFL wake-up call, and that was definitely mine. When people read Beat the Coverage, what do you hope they do next? They close the book. They take a minute to reflect. What do you hope they do next? I hope they understand first that this whole Beat the Coverage is not just another sports metaphor. It is a system for staying one step ahead, under pressure, and creating wins in any environment. So if you understand that and you take those 6, steps, and then whatever the goal is, whatever you're pursuing, and you walk through it and just implement those steps, whatever the goal is, whatever the challenge is, whatever you're facing, you will have a higher percentage of winning, because it's the consistency of that routine, that framework,
that allowed me to win 9 years in the NFL at 5'10", 157 pounds. I believe if someone else follows that framework, they can accomplish whatever they want.
The book is out. It's right here on your screen. And if you scan that QR code in the top right, it'll take you straight to the Amazon page where you can pick up a copy and have it delivered to your house. JJ, it's always a pleasure to be in your company. I love our little mastermind that we have together, and I am cheering for you like you're on the field with this new book and hoping that it is a huge success. Thank you so much for stopping by the podcast today.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on too, Matthew. I appreciate you.